Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I'm going to dive into it. What if the heart is a gate? And so, human beings have wondered about many different kinds of gates. We've wondered about the pearly gates. We've wondered about the gate of, you know, our parking lot. and so, And so, human beings have been wondering about access, and pretty much the idea is that when you look at a door, it's double-sided. It has access to two positions. And so, if the heart was a gate, we're wondering what would the other side of the heart be? What would it be a gate to or a gate from? Now, the reason I wanted to title the episode this, What If the Heart is a Gate, because I wanted to, as a tribute to the poet Hafiz Shirazi. This Sufi mystic poet, 700 years ago, had a poem that years ago had a very intense impression on me. And the poem that I'm kind of dedicating this talk to, I'll tell you the imagery. I don't remember the exact wording, but I'll tell you what the story of the poem was. Hafiz, in one of his poems, he writes that one night he's with his disciple, and one night he's like the Sufi mystic, and one night he says with his heart he sees a vision. He sees that there is a slave. This is 700 years ago, by the way, the story. He sees a slave has ran away from their place, from the cruel masters that had the slave. And so the slave has gone to some random cave and is just praying to God. And Hafiz says, with his heart of hearts, with the eyes of his heart, it was such an incredible sentence. He said, with the eyes of his heart, he saw that person who was praying. And so he gets this vision. He tells his disciple, after coming out of some trance or something, that this disciple, he gives the disciple the exact GPS address of the cave where the slave is in. The slave has ran away. um, and so, believe it or not, the slave is in some sort of, somebody mentioned in the chat section, it's some sort of purgatory situation. And so the slave's in the cave just praying, and Hafiz tells his disciple, quickly get on a horse, run, and you gotta go save this slave before the cruel slave owners come and take him back, And the disciple runs, but before the disciple goes, Hafiz tells him that you can't talk to this guy. You're gonna go there, you're gonna see the scared slave, but you can't talk to him. You shouldn't say a single word. And back in the day, especially between guru and disciple, there was this kind of honesty to the moment. So the guy in the story, he's not gonna talk to the guy. But here's the thing. The disciples like, no way, no way, no way. As the disciples running, he gets to the location and he sees the slave in the cave. In that cave that Hafiz saw in his inner realms. The disciple gets there and he gets happy because he sees if Hafiz was right about the GPS address of the cave, he's probably right that the slave owners are coming to take this guy. So the disciple's there and he wants to save him, but the disciple realizes Hafiz told him you can't speak. So the poor slave thinks this guy is from the slave owners who's come to take the slave back. But this guy knows he's there trying to free the slave from the hell that's chasing him. In the story, the guy connects the hands of the slave because the guy in the cave is scared, right? He's freaking out. So the guy connects his hands to a rope and connects the rope to the horse, and the guy just, what do you call it? The guy goes to Hafiz. Now, the moral of the story is, as this guy is taking the slave to a better place, you know, check this out. The disciple starts crying. This grown man, while the slave is shouting, "No, I don't want to go back," with this crazy cry, the disciple who's on the horse is also crying. Is also crying. The disciple is crying because he suddenly realized the lesson. And the lesson was that you may think you are in suffering. That guy, that person in the cave whose hands were connected to the horse with the rope, he felt he was suffering. He felt he was going to the inefficient. But the disciple knew that they were going back towards his freedom. So in that story is an example of Hafez kind of looking through the gate of the heart. We have other mystical texts. I think there are some relevant to Suleiman where he also looked into his heart and found the, like, I don't know, 49 gates of wisdom or something. So it's a very unique idea. I mean, this the title of today's episode is more esoteric than usual, but it's there was an intensity about that story that sometimes you're going through suffering, you think it's suffering, but it's you're actually climbing the mountain. You know, that means if you want to get to the top of the mountain, and if you climb and you fall, or any point of the mountain you climb and you're like, did I get to the top? It's like if there's more to go. Like I kind of feel that leaving this world, this plane of existence, is strangely like leaving your work office. Okay, that's too. That's too. I have had experiences where I have acknowledged a different sort of sight to the moment. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, of course, my visual senses, my sensory perception is intact and it's active, and that is all well. But aside from the sensory perception, there's also the processor of the senses. And we as human beings, we take that processor to be our individual consciousness ourself, you know? So your identity is processing your senses to result to meaning. All that we human beings can do is share our inner realms before we fade out of manifestation. And sharing your inner realms happens in two ways. Is you can move vocally, or you can move as action. So that means there's moments like, just like I sit down to give these talks and I just watch my inner realms, and as my inner realms start moving, I just begin to speak. Similarly, it's like various moments, even like people, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if people, I've ever mentioned this in these talks, but I have a strange attention to space as well, physical space in regards to movement. That means sometimes my reflexes have shocked me, but then I realized the reflex was not in accordance to a sort of rational sequence of events. Oh no, something fell, something has to get grabbed, like in midair, rather than that. It's kind of like dropping your pen, but you're writing something so important that midway while the pen is falling, you grab it, and then you continue writing. For the sake of an advanced civilization, we gotta spill the beans. All right, guys. Every human being, they just like how you open up to language on your own, how you get different experiences of reality and conception. You have, ever since your birth, you just haven't noticed it, have been having an experience of space. You have not just been experiencing matter move in space, you have been aware of the space between the words that make up the sentence of reality. When you're aware of that space, it reverse engineers into emptiness, and matter reverse engineers to infinite speed. Sorry, it doesn't reverse engineer, it expands into towards infinite speed. That means that what we get fascinated when matter moves beyond us, our ability to see it, and we also get fascinated about what was there before matter. Now, the similarity is that both will appear as space and a sort of invisibility to the human being. What does that mean? That means your mind is not an object, but you have been treating it as an object. And when we look at subjects, subjects are for objects. You know, a subject is for an object. A subject is like the soul of an object. Okay, you know. The clue is balance. When you look at the human body, you see that if like, let's say you get wounded, or you're running somewhere and your shoulder hits something and it's like kind of gets wounded, your body instantly heals. It sends assistance. And so one thing to notice about this life, that you can be in a symbiosis with nature if you understand that balance is the key to many doors in this life, you know? There's been times I've asked a person a question and that person didn't answer. I remember. I asked the person a question, the person didn't answer. I asked the person a question again, the person didn't answer. Only the third time the person answered. And I was like, holy shit. It took 3 times to get the question there. But then I realized it should have taken more. Because the states of mind, the way we are, there is such flux that on some level, human existence, there's no belief system. Belief systems are surfboards. Then after you got the belief system, you got to balance yourself in moving through this life. And the thing is, if we divide it between known dimensions and unknown dimensions, we are only using information from our known awareness. What if you had an unknown awareness? What if you were not you? What if before you were ever you were the attention that was moving the cosmos? You know, I feel that your presence is the gate of the heart. Your presence is a relationship with the moment that is not ideological. You can think of it in any way, try to extract it in any way. You can try to find the outer treasure only to reveal its inner. It's like you open a treasure box, and inside the treasure box there's a mirror. And then you realize, okay, the treasure is not outside of me. What can be said? It's just being here. All of it is being here. It's like, what was energy before energy was a thought? Before we understand the concept of energy as a concept, what was its experience? Could it be that we are thinking evolution began from the earth, but could evolution be the simultaneous life of the universe? Right now, I notice that my body is here. You know, I'm in this moment right now, present. I'm aware of the tree outside. I'm aware of my computer, my coffee cup. All of these are in this moment. But then I look at my mind and I see in my mind, I am envision myself flying in the sky right now. I can envision that. But I am not physically flying. And I thought, could it be that all physical reality is one side of a coin, and that the other side of the coin has always been going on, and that the mind of the creature has nothing to do with the body of the creature? Do you know? As if the body is helping the mind just to realize what it is, and then when the mind roars, the body is everywhere. This world is silence plus noise equals a story. And in pure silence and stillness, that is the confrontation of the truest suffering. There is a suffering of what you wanted in the future that didn't happen, and there's a suffering of that which has been lost. Do you know? I have, guys, I'm a person who I haven't cried only when people have passed away. I have cried when I also noticed technologies in history were passed away. And there was this, believe it or not, this ancient there was this sort of rage. I could tell you, strange, intuitive rage, as if I felt this world is made of human attention, and yet the human attention is not going to the human part. It is speeding up and accelerating towards a direction that it's kind of sad, because human beings, it can be said in history that they acted artificially intelligent before they made artificial intelligence. And intelligence, true intelligence, doesn't have the existence of the concept of the artificial. The poet Hafez says, "Bring your neck out of that dark nest in which you hide. I will pour effulgence into your mind." state of novelty is a guide. It is the greatest companion. You know, I honor the past. I honor the present. The past has lived its life. The present is living its life. But when it comes to the future, I don't just honor it. I feel the only way to bring it is to be it. And that when Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, he didn't mean change the world. He means when you change, the world changes. So the only way to see something else is a new step. That is the only belief Mr. Within will grant you to have. If you're going to believe something, believe in novelty. Believe in the unknown space where knowledge endlessly is poured out from, sprouts from. You know, I would honestly, it like broke my heart when I realized that we are 8 billion creatures on a rock and we created language. Let me tell you why it broke my heart. Because I felt we have been painting from inside a sphere and we have no clue what outside the sphere is. We have built a civilization based on our own preference, not realizing that deep down who we truly are is the world's preference. So language is both an advanced technology, and if we don't update or move beyond this technology, it can become limiting. You know, that means it's like using a rotary phone when you're a busy CEO is not the best. When you look at religion, most religions, they go the path of submission. And wisdom in religion is fear of God, and the reason that's wisdom is because fear of God is the fear of the moment. So you can say the person who feared God, who was about to do something, suddenly that fear came in, just the fact that there was an invisible watcher, right? You see, an ideological system is designed so man is not alone with just himself. Very few people on this planet can truly go to the depths of silence and stillness and then see. And it's not a few people can go. Every person is technically, their eyes are there, but it's your unconscious eyes. Unless you make them conscious, you don't have access to the ability. It's all an inner authorization and the permission you have given yourself to breathe in a world that you're only in once. You know, when I see birds, I don't see birds be shy. You know, I mean, certain creatures, you see their nature. You see the passivity of animals. Do you know? That means you can see one dog being a gentler dog than another dog. And that doesn't have to do just with how the dog was raised, but it also has to do, it doesn't have to do just with where the dog was raised, but also has to do with the nature of the creature itself. Do you know? So I feel we're all like going through the snowball effect, but the snowball is experience. And everything we experience adds to the snowball. And then at the end of this life, this giant snowball at an intense momentum of its life's work is just rolling through life, and then at the end, it's as if all that your hands have held, you ask yourself, who was this for? And when you see you are temporary, your civilization is the only hands that can receive the gift of your life. Because we're temporary. You live for yourself, I mean, sure. You know, most people right now, that when I see civilization, people are like, I win. I don't care about the world. You know, I'm here for a little while. Why should I care about this billion-year-old kind of science project of civilization? I'm just going to get what I want and then get out. And you know what kind of a tragedy that is. It is like the ultimate strategy. That means I wouldn't be surprised if humanity is under an alien invasion. I wouldn't be surprised. Because I am noticing as time goes on, the human dimension become more blurry, more blurry. And so this and the issue is mainly because it kind of breaks my heart, you know. God, my heart's breaking a lot this talk. uh, what do you do with a broken heart? You know, you probably order a new one, right? The right answer is you fix it to a point where it was never broken. You see, this life is like battles. It doesn't matter if you're a man, it doesn't matter if you're a woman, it doesn't matter if you're gentle, it doesn't matter if you're intense. This life is a battle. It's a series of events. That means the creature wakes up and it's like action, 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 sleep. Action, 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 no action, sleep. Action, no action, no action. It's this random combination of how the effort of your moment was pushed and pulled and where your attention goes. You know, there was sometimes in life when you trust your intuition, it doesn't make sense in the short term. That means in the short term, when I started giving these talks, it wasn't that people were rude to me. People just was like, okay, man, you're all right. You're doing something, okay. But it was only the inner vision that kept me really going. And that's what I think it is. I think that, especially in many relationships in life, whether it's with your spouse or whether it's with your colleagues or comrades or whether it's with your civilization, you right now have a relationship to your civilization and with your civilization. You're just unconscious of it, and the civilization doesn't care for that relationship you have with it. Because if it did, it would run to the assistance of people. You know, because every person is fighting a battle you cannot see. And that's why I see that the leadership of various institutions in today's world, all over the planet, they are not conscious. They are like, let me tell you, on some level it's weird, as if it's like there's this war going on. It's like the kingdom of humanity is being sieged, and human beings are just going in the battle, and they're like, I want to fight what I want to fight. You know, not realizing that there's many things in um, during the storm that you cannot control. That means that is the strength. That is what youth misses, only to realize it years later. That the strength of what happens in life begins from where your eyes are. Honor the sight that is unknown, that is staring at the known. For this is where life is dancing, where life is showing its great performance. You know, when I give these talks, it does feel like I'm performing, but it doesn't feel like I'm performing to a human audience. It feels like I'm just the creature, aware that the sands of the hourglass are falling, and I'm just shouting. Okay, everyone, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of Hafez, the person with the story I was telling you at the beginning. The Sufi mystic poet from 700 years ago or something. Hafez says, greatness is always built on this foundation: the ability to appear, speak, and act as the most common man. Hafez says, how seek the way which leadeth to our wishes? By renouncing our wishes. The crown of excellence is renunciation, because it means you let the world move first and then life is gifting you. Hafez says, we have not come here to take prisoners, but to surrender even more deeply to freedom and joy. Hafez says, now is the time to understand that all your ideas of right and wrong were just a child's training wheels to be laid aside when you finally live with veracity and love. Hafez says, laugh because that is the purest sound. So technically these birds are laughing right now. It's like, these birds are laughing at me? Hafez says, the only friends who are free from cares are the goblet of wine and a book. Give me wine, that I may for a time forget the cares of the world. Hafez says, love is simply creation's greatest joy. Hafez says, run, my dear, from anything that may not strengthen your precious budding wings. Run like hell, my dear, from anyone likely to put a sharp knife into the sacred, tender vision of your beautiful heart. Hafez says, remember, for just 1 minute of the day, it would be best to try looking upon yourself more as God does, for she knows your true royal nature. Hafez says, pulling out the chair beneath your mind and watching you fall upon God, what else is there for Hafez to do that is any fun in this world? You see, human beings get bored with knowledge and they go towards the unknown. I think this is like a universal pattern. Hafez says, grieve not, because thou understand not life's mystery. Behind the veil is concealed many a delight. Hafez says, I am in love with every church and mosque and temple and any kind of shrine, because I know it is there that people say the different names of the one God. Hafez says, fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions. Hafez says, let tenderness pour from your eyes the way sun gazes warmly on earth. Hafez says, all these words are just the front. What I would really like to do is chain you to my body, then sing for days. Yeah, guys, I mean, you gotta understand, 700 years ago was a different time. Hafez says, be content with that, with what thou hast received, and smooth thy frowning forehead, for the door of choice is not open either to thee or me. Hafez says, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. Hafez says, if, like the prophet Noah, you have patience in the distress of the flood, calamity turns aside, and the desire of 1,000 years comes forth. Hafez says your love should never be offered to the mouth of a stranger, only to someone who has the valor and daring to cut pieces of their soul off with a knife, then weave them into a blanket to protect you. Hafez says the body will again become restless until your soul paints all its beauty upon the sky. For when the heart tastes its glorious destiny, and you awake. What an incredible sentence. The heart tastes its glorious destiny, and you awake. You trust life, and its dimensions advance forth. If you distrust it, that means no human being on this planet, if you have trusted anything and it has turned out whether chaotic or ordered, don't reduce the value of your trust. We're all in training in a strange way, in the sense that it's all trusting the moment. For me, I get drawn to what I trust. But then I had this mentality where I realized my world is simultaneously being the edge of my awareness. So because my world is being the edge of my awareness, and even Ludwig Wittgenstein says the limits of my language are the limits of my world, the awareness is the edge of the linguistic world and the real world. The awareness, your awareness in this moment, is the common denominator between the outer realm's edgelessness and the inner realm's edge. Sorry, the outer realm's edge and the inner realm's edge. It's like they're the same edge, which is your awareness. Okay. Anyways, Guys, I'm going to continue with the talk, but it's an interesting question. What is a soul? Just the fact that you are saying a soul. You're not language. You never were. You're not thought. And even if you were, that thought is not physically here. You know? So, Dr. Mordecai, in the chat section, there's a quote that Aristotle says it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. I would recommend, in order for you to not feel emotionally disturbed by what I'm saying, if you disagree with it, Dr. Mordecai, you don't have to, just because you hear words, think that those views are it. Okay, so guys, I'm gonna rephrase what I'm saying, and if anybody doesn't like the content, you don't have to stay in. You don't have to. You can tune somewhere else. You know. What I'm saying is, when we look at it, there's a lot of unknown gaps in reality, and people are constantly trying to hide those unknown gaps, thinking that the past is not ready for them. You know, I'm sorry, Dr. Mordecai, who has made you the knower of what's perfect for all the children in the world? Do you have the experience of all the children of the world, Dr. Mordecai? You don't. You don't. The poetry of Hafez is from 700 years ago. Guys, keep that in mind. Anyways, let's finish this quote tunnel. Hafez says, words have no language which can utter the secrets of love, and beyond the limits of expression is the expounding of desire. Listen, this world is a lunatic sphere. Don't always agree it's real. Even with my feet upon it and the postman knowing my door, my address is somewhere else. Hafez says, when you can make others laugh with jokes that belittle no one and your words always unite, Hafez will vote for you to be God. Hafez says there is an ambush everywhere from the army of accidents. Therefore the rider of life runs with loosened reins. Hafez says, this place where you are right now, God circled on a map for you. Hafiz says only heart to heart can speak the bliss of mystic knowers. And guys, I'll end it here because the quote tunnel here, because these talks are inclined towards a mystical edge. You know, every time in history, even Socrates came and spoke about a new view of the world, and people at that time didn't like it. And the world is changing, you know, and people assume they know what is best for the future, but that's not the approach. The approach is every human being has a different DNA, every human being has a different kind of opening to sight, and it's not an ethnocentric decision upon everything. Therefore, it has to be an ambition towards a global community where we don't think we are the ideas, so we can look at the ideas. For example, in the chat section right now, Dr. Mordecai has thought, I feel, that what I'm saying is me. He feels the language is the person, and that's what I'm constantly trying to bring to the awareness of people. That the language shouldn't define you, and when the language does, you could be a doctor and you would be scared. Because language is your life. If the language is different, you'll be like, what does this mean? It's unknown. So fear is self-created. Didn't you know? You consider the meaning of phenomena, do you not? And what for me is scary, I would say this, how the world speaks. I think the heart is presence at its core. I feel, this is my personal ideas I'm sharing right now. I've developed a system, I call it the ring of the absent heaven. And the ring of the absent heaven is this idea that this world we're in, the moment we open our eyes in the conscious waking state, it's a plane of existence. And this plane, in some sense, is, I consider, 4 dimensions in this reality. It's even, I find it, the model I've developed, kind of, it sustains itself even in dream states, but I'll tell you what it is. I've noticed that there's 4 dimensions that human beings need to become content with in order to fully be able to navigate in this plane of existence. The 0 dimension, the 1 dimension, the 2 dimension, the infinite dimension. I use these 4 symbols personally. The 0 dimension is space. You got to be comfortable with space. You got to realize, just like how a cup of coffee is full, after you drink it, it's empty. Many things have meaning, and suddenly the meaning goes away. The children of humanity and the future generations, they need to be able to have an ability to notice absence, to notice how there was something and that thing could go away. Then they will see the real world. So in life right now, even as I'm speaking to you, I'm aware that the silence is like the absence of my words. You know, the stillness is like the absence of emptiness for my movement. You know, is the space for my movement. And the space of the moment is where it all begins. So once you become comfortable with space, then you go on to the singular dimension. The 1 dimension. The 1 dimension means you as a human being need to have an ability to acknowledge individual phenomena. What does that mean? That means, imagine I went into a room, I'm comfortable with the space in the room, now I'm getting comfortable with the stuff in the room, with this, how things can be an individual. You could look at the whole world and see it as one universe. You could look at a person and see them as one person. Do you know, you can ask that person about their earliest memory and treat that as only one memory. Do you know? So it's an ability to acknowledge the singularity of phenomena, the individualism of phenomena. You know? So after you're content with the zero dimension, and after you're content with the singular, with all individual phenomena, then we went to duality. So then you require to be comfortable how in one moment there is two sides to the coin. There is chaos and order here. They are both members of the civilization. They are both qualities of this reality. So once you are content, once you can see, as the poet Rumi says, chaos and order are the wings of the bird. Right and wrong are the wings of the bird. The bird is not here to just look at what's right and wrong. The bird is here to utilize whatever view it has to fly. So then, after you're content with space, you're content with singular phenomena, with individualism, then you become content with dualism, duality. You become comfortable with the endless stories that can animate on this planet, the endless ways that we have evoked the world. And I say these talks mysticism is not for the faint of heart. That means if there is fear in your eyes, listen to that fear, or you will break if you keep going through fear like that. Once you're content with duality and you realize you're content with space, what's in the space of the room, you're content with the singular stuff in the room, you're content with the dualistic view, all the dualistic things in the room, the shading, the let's say the light, the darkness, any dualistic identification with the moment. And then, do I say singularity is the mother of duality, duality is the father of infinity. Once you are comfortable with the dual, and after you have two, then you don't need three, then it's infinity. You need one duality to get to, in some sense, infinitely move. That means I could think of the relationship of a self with a world, a self inside a world, and this relationship of the self and this relationship of a world. For example, the Buddhist is seeing this dualistic concept, and they are seeing it as reincarnation, endless kind of, this eternal being peeking its head out of the waters of eternity into a temporal life or something. So there is that kind of view, but the idea is that once you're content with these four, which ultimately are all leading to your presence, once you realize that as you are being a creature of whatever ideological clothing, there is the simplicity is right there. When you zoom into complexity, you see it's simple processes that led to that complexity. And in physics, we're advised to look at simpler principles. But the thing is that the world has such a desire to be complex, it forgets that simplicity, and then it fights itself. And when the language wars end, that will be a free humanity. I will kind of tell you that my overall view is that language could never contain truth, and it's a sort of idol worship. That means we were worshipping idols, and once the idols were slapped out of our hands, we started worshipping ideas. We became subject worshippers after we became object worshippers. And even to this day, we have not wondered about beyond it. We have not wondered if we are more than a subject. We have just been nullified into atoms that couldn't be anything else. It's like, thank you, modern world. It's who are you building this civilization for if there's no free will? You know? The world gives itself its own honor. A lot of phenomenology is cyclical, you know? I was raised in a religious environment, but I could tell you that I noticed there is something no idea on this planet can own. No idea. However beautiful it may be. It's that it's all one giant experiential process. Our experience makes us divide life. Existence is one dance. Welcome to the chat, Chris. I'm not sure, what do you mean by which perspective? The perspective that we are beyond language as creatures? To be honest, I remember here reading a Rumi quote that set me free from a lot of things that I kind of was running after. Rumi had this quote, he said, when you are younger, you want to change the world. But when you're older, you want to change yourself. You change yourself, you know. And I kind of looked at it, all right, what is it? The human lifespan, let's say if you're, you know, if it goes well, you're here for 100 years, okay? And what is every day you wake up in a system that was here before you, and you open your eyes. And for me, anybody who tells you not to look at this world because it's dangerous, those people are dangerous. The fearful, those who fear and speak, their words always have danger at them. Chris, interesting question. Let me tell you this perspective of how we're all presence before we're personalities. We're energy conscious of itself in a very raw, attributeless way. I feel, I mean, my personal view is that I feel we should take steps towards Civilization 2.0, which in other talks I've spoken about. I feel that human beings should mature and realize language is not them, it is a technology, you know? We are killing each other over words. We're fighting over words, not realizing there's a silent world taking place the whole time. For me, it's an advancement of civilization. So I would see really that imagine any person, let's say you wanted to improve the employees of the company. Or let me think of this for a second. I feel we should acknowledge the language threshold. We should have educational reform. And as we have educational reform, we shift how civilization can prepare for that educational reform. Right now, people don't realize it. They think the world is perfect. They think this is good enough. Mr. Within is telling you this is not the civilization we deserve. This is just the civilization we have for now. And novelty, you must take strides towards it. That means the biggest thing you should fear in this life is your own ethnocentrism. Too many stories. Stories have possessed man. We are not a concept. We are aware of concepts. Every day you wake up, you evoke as a different self. Now, the issue is we are living in a. I want to make this kind of global because when you look at it, there is different variations. I mean, right now, not only does every person have a DNA, different DNA, but they're raised in different cultures and different nations and different parts of the world, right? So we are right now kind of like aliens that just look like each other. The inner realms of people are very different. You know, I say that there is just like a multiplayer online video game. It's just going to be a civilization where the video characters know they're not just the video characters, you know. So in front of your eyes, I call that the outer realm. Behind your eyes, I call that your inner realms. Your outer realms, they go alongside with the biological program. That means the physical purpose of life is to continue existing. But the non-physical meaning that life could potentially have has to do with how the finger has, how the pen has moved in your hand, in your mind's hand. We fear our intelligence and we stop exploring it. And you know, the issue was, I don't know, I feel like I'm writing a book on this. I'm going to share it soon. But I'm just getting tired of, you know, a civilization that is just looks like it looks too rectangular. You know, I feel ultimately the value of non-duality for civilization is just mindfulness. But still, you need innovators. That means let's think of. I mean, this is an interesting argument that actually let me not direct the talk that way. Guys, language is a technology, and uh, it's not the person. That means ask your get a piece of paper, write on the first line, "Who am I?" and then close your eyes and think of answers, and then you'll be like, "What is this? Am I all these different answers I could give myself every day, waking up and asking the question, "Who am I?" You see, no, you're more like the process, kind of how Buckminster Fuller said that they asked him what is God, and Buckminster Fuller is like, it's a verb, man. You know. Buckminster Fuller said it's a verb. You know, the Whiteheadian process, for example, life is not just a set of particles in space, it's a process. And it's an unknown process. And because we have feared the unknown, we have stuck our head in like an ostrich into a sort of filtration of what the world has to be and what is good for everybody and what is good. It's like where are the humble people who realize they don't know? It gets built in steps. You suddenly can't see 10 steps ahead. You know, it all depends on, it's like a chess game with the world, you know, with civilization and history. So anyways, guys, I'm going to end the talk here and open it up to Q&A. If anybody has a question, feel free to share. The talk's ended at this point, though. Let me see, did I speak about the subtitle? So Chris says, yes, we as a civilization seem to be going through the motions, watching others. So a possible solution is to be so full of light others can't help but notice and mimic. Yeah, this world is kind of like we're candles. And what can a candle do? You share your light on before the light goes out. What else can you do? Whether you care for, like I'll share this quote with you. There's this quote from Rabindranath Tagore. He says, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy." Service was joy. That is the ultimate, one of the ultimate transformations that humanity will go towards, where you will realize whatever you do in this life, whatever action, it's either serving yourself or it is serving the world at large. That means that moment where that person smokes a cigarette and throws their cigarette on the street, that action has a service to them and has a service to the street where everybody's walking, you know? And so I kind of noticed that if I live for myself, it's as if I have ignored the mind of the civilization that has ushered forth, That's the thing. I don't feel we have been made meaninglessly to just be. I feel that we have the capacity to direct ourselves as if life was just speed and then velocity came into the picture, direction came into the picture, and as we right now we are living with direction. It's not just speed pointed just at random places, so we can direct our minds. 4 billion years of evolution, so we can choose. So your choice is no little thing. Chris says, have you experimented with conscious creation techniques as taught by Goddard, Hicks, etc.? Not really, no. I don't know. No, I'm not familiar with it. Let me see. Conscious creation. I mean, you are a conscious being, and there is existence here. So anything you do is kind of like conscious creation. Anyways, guys, my whole thing is that I noticed that there's this new age wave of kind of the world. Like, you can kind of see it when you see science fiction movies in theaters like become box office hits. That means people want something to escape out of their common day. Filmmakers know this, that the point of the film is to teleport you, to transport your attention to a different sense of being, you know? And when we see that so many children, they go and see 3D movies, they want to live in a reality that is advanced, that means civilization is waiting for its advancement, and that's all based on how much we decide to the past to occupy the space of the future, and the future to be its create its own space. That means I kind of noticed that it's like the issue with conditioning is very far rooted, because civilization, society, even how people began, where words came from, it was the actions of people, you know, which eventually was kind of symbolically pinpointed with sound. There's two modes. There's two modes of thinking about advancement. Either the civilization isn't ready, oh no, or we try it out and we see if the civilization is ready or not. That it's like an honor of the intelligence of the future generations that requires a space to begin from the beginning. So if we as a species can become more playful, more simple with language, observe it rather than be it, then we don't fight. And this doesn't mean in civilization you stop being a person. Live as you normally are, but just notice what is an inner phenomena of meaning in the moment and what is the outer phenomena. Do you know, like I call that tree a tree. You know, someone in a different language calls that tree something else. So what is that? That means the language is not the thing. So how could your linguistic idea of yourself be you? So I'm telling you, you are observing the thought that you think you are, and that's why people say I have a thought or I have different thoughts. That's why it's plural. That's why all of life is not just one thought. You know, because thought was just an addition. Before the concept, there was a totally different approach to reality. You know, this world is like an empty page to some degree, and you become responsible for it when you recognize your mortality and the value of your life. You know, and the civilization 1.0, I call it, is inefficient. It's inefficient. It's like before we think of advancing civilization, we need to first sit down, create some sort of global network to even be able to talk about the idea of how to develop how to build an advanced civilization. I feel, regardless, I don't feel this world has too much of a spiritual purpose or a kind of just no purpose at all. I feel it's all in front of our eyes. It's like a exam, you know, at the end of a semester, and that exam is literally in front of you. The question, the mystery, the living reality is in front of your eyes. No, try to be the best employee of your try to shift the corporate culture rather than running out of the culture, I would say. So what does that mean? That means it's all behavior. Some people know this, but it's like the moment is evoked into meaning. You know, I say don't quit corporate jobs. But have honor. That means if you don't care about your work, then you should probably. If you feel if like here's how I would answer that question. Interesting question, by the way, William, Sir William. Corporate jobs are, listen, if you feel the captain of the ship is a good captain, follow that captain. But if you feel the captain of the ship is not a good captain, then and if you feel if you could see yourself in the eyes of the owner of the company, would you want yourself in your own company? And if you answer that question, you would know if you need to quit your corporate job or not. Because I'm telling you, in this world, it's like we have a certain amount of energy throughout the day. If you're gonna attempt stuff, attempt with the greatest efficiency to the best of your ability. That's it. That's it. That means that was the main shift. Before it was like you're just running through life trying to chase it. Then it becomes something where you're like, okay, what about its style? What about its eloquence? What about its rhythm? What about the melody? You know? What if one day you came to this world and you realized that this concept of divinity was actually how the cosmos is playing the symphony, and those who hear it, they dance with the rhythm on this earth? I don't feel the strategy is to escape what is causing your suffering. You have to look at what is causing your suffering, or you'll never see what's causing it. And the funny thing is, in mysticism, people looked at what's causing their suffering, and then they realized the world is just being the world. They are interpreting what the world means to them. You know, as Epictetus says, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from the judgments we have about them. Do you see? So the judgments you have about what is going on is different than what is actually going on. I would say because we're creatures that just open our eyes in the day and then we come home and close our eyes. It's so the thing is, it's like the day for me is like sitting at a table with a cup of coffee and a piece of paper, and wondering what is the most valuable thing, what is the most efficient thing. I mean, sometimes it's like you gotta be a general of yourself. You gotta kind of wonder, if you were your greatest own employee, what would you do for yourself? You know. The thing is, nowadays, of course, Sir William, I'll tell you, nowadays, it's the world is changing because the internet has changed the game. And what does that mean? That means, uh, think of it this way: TV and technology has made the human being want to access and process a lot of information as much as the person can. It's like we've built a civilization faster than we can simply be happy in it. I would say, if you have a corporate job, um, go ask your boss what the vision of your boss on the overall company is, and try to see how far the captain of the ship is seeing the ship sail. And then you would know if you need to quit your corporate job. But corporate culture, I mean, Google and Amazon and these giant companies, they kind of are at the peak of the evolution of corporate culture, because they realize there's some employees that if it's a labor task, you got to be strict with the employee. But if it's not a labor task, then being strict is not allowing the person to creatively create the value, you know? I feel the idea is like, if you don't know what to do in the moment, let the world make the first move. Honestly, that's what I learned from chess, you know? When you don't know what to do, just don't do anything and watch. And then you'll notice something, because this world is not a painting, it's like a film where the main actor. So, if there's more questions, please keep them coming. Interesting questions so far. Thanks for sharing. You know, Terence McKenna had this quote that when I heard it, I laughed. It was a quote that I laughed for a while. Actually, it was like maybe like a 10-second laugh. Like, that's a long laugh. You know? And he said nobody knows enough to worry. And it was a shocking moment when I realized, before the worry, any word could be replaced. Nobody knows enough to insert whatever you want there, you know? So, so what does that mean? That means nobody knows enough. And when you realize that, that's how the mind suffers. The mind suffers when it feels a game is happening and it doesn't know what's going on in the game. The body suffers when the body can't play the game. You know, so you got to attend to your objective realms and your subjective realms. With your subjective realms, because you're not a subject, it's this unknown witness at most. You know, at best we can explain. You know, this this unknown witness of how knowledge is moving and animate is what you require to study, and then mystics say, yogis say, that you tap into your true nature. Even Sri Ramana Maharshi says meditation is your true nature. When you tap into your true nature, that means you don't feel living on this planet is like going against the river. It feels the opposite. You feel welcomed by your whole being. And I can't tell you, that is the best healing. When you realize the resistance you had in your life, the enemies you saw in this world, they were the enemies you saw in that moment. They say yesterday's enemy is tomorrow's friend. because the world changes, and when you acknowledge it's a game, you don't get hurt by the game. Do you know? That means this. It's kind of like I could tell you, soccer or any sport. It's kind of semi spiritual because the all the people know when they enter the let's say for example the soccer field, when they enter the football field, they're when they're there, it's as if they're all playing a certain role. It's as if when you watch like any sport, it's like a mini world of its own with its own rules and its own actors. And all those people in that sport, they know they are not that actor, you know, because the game finishes, they all shake hands and they leave the court. Like when you take that in, it's as if it's like all professions are actions, and actions are conducted by the actor in in the moment consciously. Realize you're a creature of attention before you're a creature of thought. They'll, there's two kinds of suffering. There's this actual suffering, which is pain, like you fall from a bike and yeah, you suffer. But but then there's a suffering where how long after that moment has passed, that emotion from that moment lingers. And if you are mindful, then you know you're free before you need to be. There's the Zen story. I'll say this, guys, and if anybody has a question, we can ask. But meanwhile, I'll tell you the story. There were these two Zen monks. It's a Zen story, and there was this. What do you call it? There was this younger monk, junior monk, and this senior monk in a monastery. And the junior monk is new to the monastery, and they would go for walks. And it's a Zen story. Keep that in mind. And so what happens is the junior monk is new to monk school, and monks take vows, which are vows of renunciation, strict vows to not do certain behaviors. You know, when you see a monk, that's a person who's made heavy commitment to certain behavior. The junior monk and the senior monk are walking on this road, and they see this gorgeous woman. They see this beautiful woman. And she is there, and this woman needs to cross some stream. She has a long dress, she can't. And the junior monk is like, what are we going to do? We're monks. We took vows. We can't touch women. We can't do anything. You know? And so as they're walking, to the surprise of the junior monk, they get to the point where the lady is, and the junior monk keeps walking forward, but the senior monk stops. And the junior monk just looks, it's like, whoa. You know, and the senior monk looks at the beautiful woman and says, ask her what she needs. And she tells him she needs to get across the stream. And so the monk picks her up and takes her to the other side of the stream, and she thanks him, and it's a lovely moment, and then the monk comes back and goes. Now, as they're walking, the junior monk is like, what the fuck? The junior monk can't fathom, can't believe that this guy's my senior monk. You know, we're not allowed to touch women. You know, this guy helped carry the woman across the street. You know? And so, it's a very intense moment, and the senior monk realizes like this junior monk is like disturbed by what he saw. Right? So they're walking for 20 minutes, and the junior monk, and the senior monk is just smiling because he knows the junior monk's gonna ask. The junior monk says, "Sir," and the junior monk says it politely. You know, if you're smart, you're polite. You know. Let me tell you, so what does he say? Politeness is a navigation of that in the atmosphere of dialogue. Anyways, I'll give a talk on it. But anyways, what happens to the junior monk is, sir, how could you carry that woman across the stream and put her down on the other side of the stream? How could you carry her? And the senior monk looks at the junior monk and says, I carried her in that moment from across the stream, and I put her on the other side of the stream. You have been carrying her for 20 minutes in your mind. And the junior monk suddenly realizes it's not about this blind, artificial kind of don't be a human being around women. It's like this kind. It's this idea that if the inner realms are devouring an image, you descend into perversion. So the Zen mindfulness that I'm speaking about, that I feel an advanced civilization requires, is that when you do something, it's in that moment and it passes on and it doesn't disturb your other moments. You know, if I would say if you're in a corporate workplace, try to work like a Zen master and see what result you get. Try in every moment to be the best of that moment and see what happens. I remember um, when I was in university, there was this line, there was this booth for this company, this financial institution, and there was a bunch of kind of MBA students, all with suits or whatever, waiting in a line. And there was a main guy there at the top of the booth, and there was a guy at the top of the booth, this financial kind of, it was like this financial firm or something, right? And all these guys with suits and interviews were there. And the guy was standing there, and all these guys were waiting, and it wasn't even like, do you know what I mean? It's like the guy hadn't even started seeing the line, and people were just waiting in the line. And I remember I had like a t-shirt and jeans, and I just I just go up to the guy straight in the nowhere, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And I remember I asked the guy eventually questions that the guy started talking, and I asked him, "What do you want from all these people who lined up?" You know, the guy told me something I never like. It got ingrained in my memory. He said, "I want to hire someone who knows what my boss wants from me." That means the guy was. I mean, of course, it's a big company. The hierarchy's higher, of course. But the guy was like, "I want someone to work for me who knows what the higher levels expect from me." Right? And I kind of like, I don't know. I incorporate that pattern from various angles. And that was the thing. This is life. It goes forth. It moves in ways we can't expect. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it smiles upside down. Sir William says, "What would you do if you had infinite money?" I would start schools. I would start the School of Athens 2.0. I would start schools of advanced communication everywhere and try to get the species to push the species towards the most advanced peak of our ability to communicate as creatures. That's what I would do. Because when you look at this planet from an aerial view, it's literally the communication of the creatures that is suggesting their intelligence. Your intelligence expresses through behavior to then lead to a result in accordance to the intent, the original intent of the action. We are pilots, and we have to realize we're pilots of our attention in this world. I would start. I mean, of course, there's many things. I mean, infinite money. If I had infinite money, I mean, honestly, you want to just get a self-sustaining advanced civilization going. That's it. After that, then it's all good. You know. Right now, it kind of feels like we can. It's you know, living in this civilization for me feels like I'm in a company. I'm an employee of a company, and the company has so much room to become better, but it's not. It can even see, you can even see that even the leaders of the company know how advanced it can become, but what is the holdback? And let me tell you what it is. It's we are still in the era of language worship. With an awareness beyond the language threshold, then there comes the strength to build an advanced civilization. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the questions. And I encourage everybody to write, you know. Seldom is this said, but knowledge was written into existence. Much blessings and all.